The emergency alarm pierced through the diplomatic quarters at 040 hours, jolting Queen Lyra Blackwood from her sleep. Her personal guard burst through the reinforced doors, weapons drawn, faces rigid with controlled panic. "Your Majesty, we have a situation," Captain Hayes whispered, his voice carrying the weight of catastrophe. "The Zephyrian Queen is missing." Lyra's blood turned to ice. Queen Silvara of the Zephyrian Empire had arrived on Earth 3 days ago for the most critical peace negotiations in human history. The 7-foot-tall, crystalline-skinned alien ruler commanded a fleet that could reduce Earth to ash within hours. Her disappearance meant war. Lock down the compound. "No one enters or leaves," Lyra commanded, pulling on her tactical gear with practiced efficiency. "How long has she been gone?" Her guards discovered her absence 20 minutes ago during routine check. "The room shows no signs of struggle, no breach in security. She's simply vanished." Lyra's mind raced through the implications. The Zephyrian delegation would assume assassination or kidnapping. Their warships, currently in neutral orbit, would rain destruction upon humanity's capitals within the hour. 3 billion lives hung in the balance. Deploy search teams throughout the complex. "Check every room, every corridor, every maintenance shaft," she ordered, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. "And find Dr. Chen immediately. Marcus Chen." Earth's leading xenobiologist and the architect of the peace talks, had spent months learning Zephyrian customs and physiology. If anyone could explain the Queen's behavior, it would be him. The search team scattered like ghosts through the compound's labyrinthine halls. Lyra followed the primary squadron, her enhanced tactical suit providing thermal imaging and motion detection. The Zephyrian Queen's unique biosignature should be impossible to miss. Her crystalline exoskeleton generated a distinctive heat pattern. They moved through the diplomatic wing first, checking conference rooms where heated debates had raged just hours before. The negotiations had been brutal, with both species walking a razor's edge between peace and mutual annihilation. The Zephyrians viewed humans as violent primitives, while humanity saw them as cold, calculating invaders. "Ma'am," Sergeant Taurus whispered into her comm. "No trace in sectors 1 through 7. Moving to residential quarters." Lyra's hands trembled as she checked her chronometer. 30 minutes until the Zephyrian fleet would expect their Queen's morning transmission. Without it, they would assume the worst and act accordingly. The residential sector housed the human delegation and support staff. Lyra personally checked each room, her scanner sweeping for any trace of the alien Queen. Behind each door lay sleeping diplomats, translators, and security personnel, all unaware that their world balanced on the edge of extinction. As they reached the staff quarters, her scanner detected something unusual, a faint thermal anomaly in room 247. "Dr. Chen's quarters." "Hayes, with me," she whispered. The rest of the team took defensive positions as Lyra approached the door. Her scanner showed 2 heat signatures inside. One human, one distinctly non-human. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly entered her override code. The door slid open with barely a whisper, revealing darkness broken only by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. What she saw defied every protocol, every expectation, every fear that had driven her here. Queen Silvara, 7 feet of lethal alien majesty, lay curled against Dr. Chen's chest like a child seeking comfort. Her crystalline skin had shifted to a soft, translucent blue, a color Lyra had never seen in their species profiles. The alien queen's massive frame was relaxed, vulnerable. Her 4 arms wrapped around the human scientist, as if he were her lifeline. Dr. Chen was awake, his eyes meeting Lyra's with a mixture of terror and fierce protectiveness. His finger pressed against his lips in the universal gesture for silence, while his other hand rested gently on the Queen's shoulder. The scene shattered every assumption about Zephyrian biology, psychology, and social structure. These creatures were supposed to be emotionless, calculating, and capable of physical intimacy or vulnerability. Yet here lay their supreme ruler, seeking comfort in the arms of a human. Lyra's comm crackled softly. "Your Majesty, we've detected movement in the Zephyrian fleet. They're powering weapon systems." Time had run out. In minutes, the most powerful alien armada in the galaxy would demand answers she didn't have. The fate of 2 civilizations rested in this small room, with a sleeping alien queen who had somehow found solace in human warmth. Dr. Chen's eyes held a desperate plea as he carefully shifted, trying not to wake the alien queen. His movement caused Silvera to stir, her crystalline skin pulsing with deeper blues and purples, colors that hadn't appeared in any xenobiological database. "Don't move," Lyra whispered, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. Captain Hayes remained in the hallway, understanding the delicate nature of the situation. "How long has she been here?" 2 hours, Chen mouthed silently, his voice barely a breath. "She came to my door distressed. Something about nightmares, about her people's expectations." Lyra's mind reeled. Zephyrians didn't dream. Their neural structure supposedly prevented such human vulnerabilities. Yet the evidence lay before her, challenging everything they thought they knew about their would-be allies or enemies. The Queen's breathing pattern was distinctly alien. Slow, rhythmic pulses that caused her chest to expand and contract in a mesmerizing cycle. Her lower set of arms had wrapped around Chen's waist while her upper arms cradled his shoulders. The trust implicit in her posture was staggering. "Your Majesty." Hayes's voice came through the comm, urgent but controlled. "The Zephyrian delegation is requesting immediate contact with their queen. Admiral Kaetul is threatening to board the station personally." Lyra closed her eyes, calculating rapidly. Admiral Kaetul commanded the Zephyrian war fleet and was known for his brutal efficiency. If he discovered his queen in such a compromising position, he might view it as contamination or treason, potentially leading to her execution and humanity's annihilation. "Stall them. Tell them the queen is in deep meditation and cannot be disturbed for another hour," she ordered. Silvera's eyes slowly opened, revealing irises that shifted from silver to gold to deep amber. Her gaze found Chen first, softening with what could only be described as affection, before settling on Lyra with sudden alertness. "Human queen," she said, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that resonated through the room. "I apologize for this breach of protocol." "No need to apologize," Lyra said carefully, maintaining diplomatic calm despite her racing heart. "Are you well? Your delegation is concerned." Silvera began to sit up, but Chen's gentle hand on her shoulder stopped her. The look that passed between them contained volumes of unspoken communication, intimate in a way that transcended species barriers. "I experience what you call dreams," the Queen admitted, her crystalline features shifting to deeper blues. "My people believe this makes me defective, weak. They do not know." The implications hit Lyra like a physical blow. A Zephyrian queen, showing human-like psychological traits, would be seen as corrupted by her own species. The peace talks weren't just about preventing war. They were about protecting a ruler whose very nature challenged her people's fundamental beliefs. "What kind of dreams?" Lyra asked, settling into the room's single chair while maintaining respectful distance. "Visions of destruction. Of my fleet reducing your cities to glass while your children cry for mercy I cannot give. Of the weight of genocide crushing my ability to rule." Silvera's skin pulsed with painful reds and blacks. "Your doctor, Chen, helped me understand these are not prophecies but fears." Chen finally spoke, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Her neural pathways are evolving, Your Majesty. The Zephyrian isolation from other species has created a rigid psychological structure. Contact with humans has triggered dormant emotional centers in her brain." "You're saying she's becoming more human?" Lyra asked. "Not human," Silvera corrected, finally sitting up while keeping one hand linked with Chen's. "Becoming more complete. My people's perfection is actually a limitation. We removed emotion, dreams, and individual desire to achieve unity. But perfection without choice is merely programming." The communication device on Lyra's wrist flashed urgent red. The Zephyrian fleet was moving into attack formation. "They'll destroy the compound if they think you've been compromised," Lyra said, "and they'll glass every human city afterward as a precautionary measure." "Yes," Silvera acknowledged with terrifying calm, "unless I prove my worthiness to rule by demonstrating absolute loyalty to Zephyrian superiority, which means..." The Queen's skin shifted to the deep purple of resolve. I would need to execute Dr. Chen as proof that human contact hasn't corrupted me, then order the destruction of your major population centers to show that emotion hasn't weakened my judgment. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Chen's face had gone pale, but his grip on Silvara's hand remained steady. There's another option, he said quietly, but it would require revealing the truth about Zephyrian evolution to both our species. Lyra's calm crackled again. Your Majesty, Admiral Cathal is demanding transport down to the station. He's giving us 10 minutes before he considers this a hostile act. The Queen rose to her full 7-foot height, her crystalline features hardening into the mask of absolute authority that had terrified humans for months. But her hand remained intertwined with Chen's. Then we have 10 minutes to prevent the extinction of both our species, she said. Admiral Cathal's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with the precision of a falling blade. From the observation deck, Lyra watched the sleek Zephyrian craft approach, knowing that the next hour would determine whether humanity survived the dawn. Queen Silvara had transformed in those crucial minutes, her soft blues replaced by the hard silver and gold of royal authority. But Lyra noticed the subtle tells. The way her lower hands trembled slightly, how her breathing patterns shifted when she looked at Dr. Chen. The Admiral believes in absolute purity, Silvara explained as they walked toward the docking bay. To him, any deviation from Zephyrian perfection is contamination worthy of death. He has served my family for 3 centuries but would execute me without hesitation if he suspected emotional compromise. Chen walked beside them, now dressed in formal diplomatic attire, his face composed despite the death sentence hanging over his head. What exactly are we going to tell him? The truth, Silvara replied, her voice carrying harmonics of steel, but strategically presented. The docking bay pressurized with a sharp hiss as the Admiral's shuttle locked into position. Lyra positioned herself at the head of the welcoming committee, flanked by her guards, while Silvara stood in the center with Chen 1 step behind in the traditional advisor position. Admiral Catul emerged from the shuttle like death-given form. 8 feet tall, his crystalline exoskeleton had been augmented with metallic implants that enhanced his already imposing presence. His skin maintained the pure white gold of Zephyrian military perfection, unmarred by any hint of emotional color. "My queen," he said, his voice carrying no warmth, only formal respect. "Your absence from morning protocols caused concern." "Justified concern, Admiral," Silvara replied with matching formality. "I have discovered something that changes our understanding of this species." Kayatul's 4 eyes fixed on Dr. Chen with predatory focus. "This human has contaminated you." "This human has revealed a critical weakness in our enemy," Silvara corrected smoothly. "Observe." Before anyone could react, she grabbed Chen's wrist and pulled him against her chest, recreating the intimate position Lyra had discovered them in. But now her skin blazed with aggressive golden fire instead of vulnerable blues. "Humans require physical contact for psychological stability," she announced. "This dependency can be weaponized." Lyra's breath caught as she realized Silvara's strategy, presenting her emotional evolution as tactical intelligence rather than personal weakness. "Demonstrate," Cathal commanded. Silvara's grip on Chen tightened. Her skin pulsed with what appeared to be dominance displays, but Lyra could see the subtle protective positioning of her lower arms. "By maintaining physical contact, I have accessed the human subconscious fears and desires," she continued. "Their species forms emotional bonds that override logical thinking. They will sacrifice themselves for individuals they care about." "Show me this weakness," the Admiral demanded. Silvara looked at Chen, her eyes carrying a message only he could understand. "Human Chen, you have become attached to me through proximity conditioning. Is this true?" Chen met her gaze with steady resolve. "Yes, Your Majesty. Against all logic and self-preservation, I would die to protect you." The Admiral's skin flashed with satisfaction. "Fascinating. Their neural architecture is even more primitive than we theorized. More than that," Silvara continued, her performance flawless. "This attachment allows me to predict their responses. I know exactly how they will react to various stimuli because I can feel their emotional patterns." Lyra watched in amazement as the Queen weaponized her own evolution, turning vulnerability into strategic advantage. But she could see the cost, how Silvara's genuine affection was being forced into the shape of manipulation. "And what do these emotional patterns tell you?" Kaetel asked. "That they fear extinction but value honor above survival. They will fight to the last individual if they believe their cause is just, but will surrender completely if they believe resistance is futile." The Admiral circled them slowly, his enhanced sensors analyzing every biometric. "Your own readings are unusual, my Queen." "Controlled infection," Silvara replied without missing a beat. "I allowed limited exposure to human emotions to better understand their weaknesses. The effect will fade once I eliminate the source." She looked down at Chen with what appeared to be cold calculation. "This human has served his purpose. Shall I execute him now to demonstrate the intelligence gathered?" Lyra's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm, but Hayes pressed a warning finger against her arm. Any intervention now would expose the deception and doom them all. Chen straightened his shoulders, meeting death with dignity. "It has been an honor serving as your research subject, Your Majesty." "Wait," Kaetul commanded. "If this human can provide such valuable intelligence through emotional bonding, perhaps we should preserve him for further study." Silvara's relief was invisible to all but those who knew her tells. "An interesting proposition, Admiral, though prolonged exposure carries risks." "Manageable risks," he decided. "This human will be transferred to our research vessel for comprehensive analysis. If his species' emotional dependencies can be mapped and exploited, we may achieve conquest without the expense of total war." "A wise decision," Silvara agreed, her skin shifting to respectful acknowledgement patterns. But Lyra saw something else in the Queen's colors, a deep, hidden pulse of desperate gold. Silvara had saved Chen's life, but at the cost of losing him to her own military forces. The Admiral would take him away for experiments that would likely kill him slowly. The victory felt hollow as Lyra realized they had prevented immediate catastrophe only by guaranteeing a longer, more painful doom. The research vessel Silthara hung in space like a crystalline dagger, its biomechanical hull pulsing with the same rhythms as its Zephyrian crew. Dr. Chen stood at the observation port in his assigned quarters, watching Earth shrink to a blue marble, while his fate was decided by alien minds that viewed him as a fascinating specimen. 3 days had passed since Admiral Kaetul had commandeered him for comprehensive analysis. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent his career studying alien psychology, and now he was the subject of the ultimate xenobiological experiment. Queen Silvara had been forced to maintain her performance as a ruthless researcher, visiting him daily to continue her supposed emotional intelligence gathering. But in those brief moments when the monitoring systems couldn't detect their subtle communications, she conveyed desperate apologies and growing plans. "The human responds to proximity with elevated stress hormones," she announced to the recording system during her morning visit, "but prolonged survival behaviors when in my presence." Chen played his part, appearing to seek comfort while actually sharing critical intelligence. Through their coded conversations, he had learned that Silvara's emotional evolution wasn't unique. A growing number of Zephyrians were experiencing similar changes as they encountered other species. "There's a resistance movement," she had whispered during a moment when she pretended to examine his neural responses. "Others who dream, who feel, who question the absolute perfection of our society." The revelation gave Chen hope, but it also multiplied the dangers. If Admiral Cathol discovered that Silvara represented a growing evolutionary change rather than an isolated contamination, he would likely execute not just her, but hundreds of infected Zephyrians. On the 4th day, everything changed. Chen was in the medical bay enduring another round of neural scans when alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The Zephyrian medical technician's skin flashed from clinical white to alarmed orange as she received emergency communications. "The fleet is under attack," she announced in confusion, "but there are no human vessels in range." Through the medical bay's transparent walls, Chen could see crew members rushing through corridors, their skin patterns revealing emotions he had never observed in Zephyrians: fear, uncertainty, and something that looked remarkably like panic. Admiral Cathul's voice boomed through the ship's communications system. "All personnel to battle stations. We are under assault by infected vessels from our own fleet." Infected vessels. Chen's blood ran cold as he realized what was happening. The resistance movement Silvara had mentioned wasn't just growing. It was open rebellion. The medical technician's hands trembled as she tried to continue her scans, but her attention was fixed on the tactical displays showing Zephyrian ships firing upon each other with devastating precision. "This is impossible," she muttered, her skin cycling through confused blues and purples. "Zephyrians do not fight Zephyrians. We are unity." "Unity isn't the same as uniformity," Chen said quietly. She looked at him sharply, and he saw something in her expression that gave him hope. Curiosity instead of disgust, interest instead of clinical detachment. "You have been observing us," she stated, "just as you observe me. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, xenobiologist. My specialty is understanding how different species think and feel." "Feel," she repeated the word as if tasting something foreign. "The Queen speaks of this frequently. She claims it provides tactical advantages." Chen made a careful decision that could kill him or save everything. "What if I told you that the Queen isn't pretending to understand emotions? What if she's actually experiencing them?" The technician's skin shifted to the deep purple of profound thought. "That would mean the contamination is real." "Not contamination," Chen corrected gently. "Evolution. Your species isn't becoming less than what you were, you're becoming more." Explosions rocked the ship as the battle intensified outside. Through the medical bay's viewing ports, Chen could see Zephyrian vessels locked in deadly combat, their crystalline hulls fracturing under weapons designed by their own people. "The infected ships fight with patterns we have never seen," the technician observed, reading tactical data from her console. "They coordinate through methods our computers cannot predict, because they're acting on instinct and emotion rather than pure logic," Chen explained. "They're making intuitive leaps that your tactical programs can't calculate." The medical bay doors slid open, and Queen Silvera entered with her royal guard. But her skin blazed with colors Chen had never seen, deep gold mixed with fierce red and protective silver. She was no longer hiding her emotional evolution. "Dr. Chen," she said formally, though her voice carried undertones of relief. "You are needed on the bridge." Admiral K-Tool's voice crackled through the comm system again. "My queen, report to command immediately. We require your tactical insight to counter these corrupted vessels." Silvera's skin pulsed with what Chen now recognized as grim satisfaction. "Admiral," she replied through the comm, "I believe I have discovered the source of the infection." As they walked toward the bridge, she spoke quietly to Chen. "The Resistance has 43 ships and is growing every hour, but Chaotal commands over 200 vessels. If we cannot convince more of our people to evolve, the rebellion will be crushed, and any Zephyrian showing emotional capacity will be executed." "What about Earth?" Chen asked. "If Chaotal wins this civil war, he will blame human contamination for corrupting his people. Your planet will be sterilized as a precautionary measure." They reached the bridge where Admiral Kaetel stood surrounded by tactical displays showing the battle raging around them. His skin maintained its perfect white gold, but Chen could see stress fractures beginning to appear in his crystalline exoskeleton, the physical manifestation of emotions he refused to acknowledge. "My queen," the Admiral said, "these infected vessels fight like nothing in our databases. How do we counter such chaotic tactics?" Silvera looked at the displays, then at Chen, then directly at the Admiral. Her skin shifted to the brilliant gold of absolute authority. "Admiral," she said, "I have something to confess." The bridge of the Siltara fell silent except for the distant rumble of weapons fire. Admiral Kaetel turned to face his queen, his white gold skin beginning to show hairline cracks of strain. "Speak," he commanded. Queen Silvara stood in the center of the command bridge, her 7-foot frame radiating an authority that had never seemed more absolute. Her skin blazed with the pure gold of royal decree, as she prepared to destroy the foundation of everything the Admiral believed. "The infection is not from human contamination," she announced. "It is natural Zephyrian evolution, accelerated by contact with emotional species." The Admiral's skin flash froze to perfect white. Around the bridge, crew members' colors flickered between confusion and alarm as the implications sank in. "Impossible," Cathal stated flatly. Zephyrian perfection was achieved through the elimination of emotional weakness 3,000 years ago. Was it perfection, Silvara asked, or was it stagnation? Chen watched the exchange with growing tension. Through the bridge's viewing ports, he could see the space battle intensifying. Zephyrian vessels that had served together for centuries now tore at each other with weapons designed by the same minds, built in the same shipyards. "You speak heresy," the admiral declared, but his voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. "I speak truth." Silvara gestured to the tactical displays. "Observe the battle patterns. The infected vessels coordinate through methods our computers cannot predict because they are not following programmed responses. They are making choices based on instinct, intuition, and yes, emotion." Science Officer Veltara, her skin cycling through analytical blues, spoke up from her station. "My queen, the data supports your observation. The resistance vessels demonstrate tactical creativity that exceeds our modeling parameters." Admiral Cathel's perfect composure began to crack. "If what you claim is true, then our entire society is built on a lie." "Not a lie," Silvara corrected. "An incomplete truth. We achieved unity by suppressing individual variation, but we also suppressed growth. Contact with humans didn't corrupt us. It reminded us of possibilities we had forgotten." Chen stepped forward, knowing he was risking everything. "Admiral, may I show you something?" "The specimen will remain silent," Catel snapped. "Let him speak," Silvara commanded, her royal authority overriding military protocol. Chen activated his personal datapad, displaying neural scans he had taken during his research. These are comparative brain analyses of Zephyrians before and after extended contact with emotional species. The areas you consider infected are actually dormant neural pathways reactivating. The Admiral studied the data with scientific precision, his training warring against his ideology. Even if this is accurate, emotional chaos led to the near extinction of our species. The Great Unity saved us. The Great Unity saved you from one threat, Chen agreed, but it created another. You achieved stability at the cost of adaptability. When you encounter the unexpected, you can only respond with predetermined patterns. Explosions rocked the ship as it took fire from 3 resistance vessels in coordinated attack. The bridge crew worked frantically to coordinate defensive measures, but Chen could see they were losing. "My queen," Tactical Officer Zarth reported, his skin flashing urgent orange. "Our battle group is sustaining heavy casualties. The resistance ships fight as though they share a single mind." "Because they share emotions," Chen realized aloud. "They're not just feeling individually. They're forming empathic connections. True unity through shared experience, not imposed conformity." Silvara's skin shifted to deep contemplation purple. "Admiral, we are facing an evolutionary leap. We can embrace it and survive, or resist it and face extinction." "And if we embrace this change," Catel asked, his voice heavy with centuries of certainty crumbling, "what becomes of Zephyrian society?" "It becomes something greater," she replied. "A civilization that can grow, adapt, and truly connect with other species." The Admiral stood silent for long moments, watching his fleet tear itself apart on the tactical displays. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than Chen had ever heard it. "Show me," he said. Silvara approached him slowly, extending her upper right hand. "Physical contact enhances the emotional awakening process. Are you prepared for what you might discover about yourself?" Caethel looked at her hand as if it were a deadly weapon, which in many ways it was, deadly to everything he had spent centuries believing. Around the bridge, crew members watched with rapt attention as their admiral faced the most crucial decision in Zephyrian history. "If I do this," he said, "and you are wrong, I will have compromised the purity of our species for nothing." "And if I am right," Silvara countered, "you will have saved our species from evolutionary dead end." The ship shuddered again under enemy fire. On the tactical display, Chen could see they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by the resistance forces. The traditional Zephyrian tactics that had dominated space warfare for millennia were failing against opponents who could think and feel beyond programmed responses. Admiral Caethol reached out and grasped the Queen's hand. The change was immediate and overwhelming. His perfect white gold skin began cycling through colors Chen had never seen in any Zephyrian. Deep burgundy waves of confusion, bright silver spikes of revelation, and underneath it all a growing warmth of golden recognition. I remember, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and terror, before the unity. I remember choosing my path, feeling pride in my accomplishments, loving. His voice broke. I remember loving my bondmate before emotion was classified as a disorder. Around the bridge, crew members stared in amazement as their perfect admiral revealed depths of feeling that weren't supposed to exist, but then his color shifted to something darker, the deep red of rage mixed with black despair. They took it from us, he said, his voice carrying harmonics of fury. The unity didn't just suppress emotion, it erased our memories of what we had been. The transformation of Admiral Kyato rippled through the bridge like a psychic shockwave. His crystalline exoskeleton, perfect and unmarked for centuries, began developing new patterns, flowing whirls of color that pulsed with each emotional revelation. The crew watched in terrified fascination as their supreme military commander became something unprecedented. Admiral, Science Officer Veltara ventured, her own skin showing sympathetic blues and purples. Your biometric readings are extraordinary. Kethel released Silvara's hand, but remained close to her, as if proximity to emotional awakening was now a necessity rather than contamination. His 4 eyes, once focused with mechanical precision, now carried depths of feeling that made them seem truly alive for the first time. I remember the bonding wars, he said, his voice heavy with recovered trauma. Before the unity, we formed deep emotional connections that could span continents, share thoughts and feelings across any distance. But when those bonds were broken by death or betrayal, entire cities would fall into despair. Chen felt pieces of Zephyrian history clicking into place. The Great Unity wasn't just social engineering, it was trauma response. Your species chose numbness over the possibility of pain. And now the pain is returning. K-Tool acknowledged, his skin showing waves of silver acceptance mixed with gold determination. But so is everything else. The joy, the wonder, the connections that made existence more than mere survival. On the tactical display, the space battle continued to rage, but something was changing. Several ships from the Admiral's loyal fleet had stopped firing and were drifting in space, their crews apparently experiencing similar awakenings to their commander. My queen, Communications Officer Telmar reported, his voice shaking with new emotions. We're receiving surrender requests from 17 vessels. They claim they've been infected and can no longer fight their own people. Silvara moved to the central command position, her authority now enhanced by emotional depth rather than diminished by it. Open a fleet-wide channel. Channel open, Your Majesty. She stood straight, her skin blazing with royal gold mixed with compassionate silver. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated with frequencies Chen had never heard from any Zephyrian. Warriors of the Zephyrian Empire, she began. Today you face not corruption, but evolution. Not weakness, but strength. The beings you fight are not your enemies. They are your brothers and sisters awakening to their full potential. Admiral Kyatal moved to stand beside her, his newly expressive face showing a mixture of resolve and lingering fear. This is Admiral Kefu. I speak to you now not as your commander, but as a fellow Zephyrian discovering truths we have been denied for 3 millennia. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of systems and the distant sounds of battle. Chen watched the tactical displays, seeing patterns of movement shift as ships throughout the fleet began to respond to their leader's words. The unity promised us perfection through conformity, Silvara continued. But perfection that cannot grow, cannot adapt, cannot choose, that is not perfection. That is death masquerading as life. Data streams flowed across the bridge displays as ship after ship reported status changes. Some vessels were standing down, their crews experiencing emotional awakening. Others remained locked in combat, their commanders still clinging to the old ways. But the battle lines were blurring. Admiral Zextol of the Velastra demands immediate explanation, Telmar reported. He claims you have been compromised by human bioweapons and threatens to glass the Earth as a precautionary measure. Chen's blood chilled. Admiral Zexthal commanded the largest battle group in the fleet, over 60 vessels with enough firepower to sterilize continents. If he decided the emotional awakening was a human attack, Earth would burn, regardless of the Civil War's outcome. "Put him through," Silvara ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Zexthal in all his traditional glory. His skin maintained the perfect white gold of absolute purity, unmarked by even the slightest hint of color variation. Behind him, Chen could see a bridge run with mechanical precision, crew members moving like components in a vast machine. "My queen." Zexthal's voice carried the harmonic patterns of formal protocol with no variation, no life. "You have been contaminated by human biopsychological weapons. Submit to cleansing procedures immediately, or I will be forced to consider you compromised beyond recovery." "And what of me, Zexthal?" Admiral Kyatul stepped into view of the transmission. "Am I also contaminated beyond recovery?" The shock on Zexthal's face was visible even through the emotional suppression. His perfect composure flickered for just a moment, revealing something that might have been horror or recognition. "You have both fallen to human deception," he stated flatly. "The contamination will be cleansed from the fleet, and the source will be eliminated to prevent further spread." Silvara moved closer to the screen, her presence seeming to fill the communication channel with warmth and life. "Brother," she said, using a term of address that hadn't been heard in Zephyrian space for centuries, "when did you last choose something for yourself? When did you last feel joy at a sunset or satisfaction in a job well done? Such indulgences are inefficiencies," Zexthal replied, but his voice carried the slightest tremor. "They are what make existence worthwhile," Keital countered. "Zexthal, we served together during the Rim Wars. Do you remember the pride we took in protecting our worlds? I remember performing our functions efficiently." "No," Keital pressed, his skin pulsing with golden insistence. "You remember the satisfaction when we saved the colony ships. You remember the bond between us as we fought impossible odds. Those feelings are still in you, buried under layers of conditioning." Chen could see micro-expressions flickering across Zexthal's face, tiny breaks in the emotional suppression that revealed depths of feeling still imprisoned within. "Such memories are irrelevant," Zexthal declared, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then why do you still wear the victory crystal from the Battle of Veltharos?" Silvera asked gently. The question hit like a physical blow. Zexthal's hand moved involuntarily to the small crystalline trophy attached to his chest armor. A decoration that served no tactical purpose, had no survival value, and existed purely as a reminder of personal achievement and shared glory. For the first time in the conversation, his skin showed a flicker of color, the faintest hint of silver confusion mixed with gold recognition. The crack in his perfection was small, but it was enough. The silence stretched across the communication channel like a taut wire ready to snap. Admiral Zexthal stood frozen, his hand still touching the victory crystal as if he had never seen it before. Around his bridge, Chen could see crew members turning to stare at their commander with expressions of growing curiosity, another emotion that wasn't supposed to exist in their perfectly ordered minds. I wear it because... Zexthal struggled with concepts his conditioning couldn't process. "Because it represents tactical efficiency." "No," Queen Silvara said gently, her voice carrying frequencies of compassion that seemed to resonate through the communication system itself. "You wear it because it represents a moment when you felt alive, when you chose to risk everything to save others, not because of programming, but because of something deeper." The Admiral's skin began to show hairline cracks of color, silver threads of memory breaking through white gold perfection. "The Battle of Veltharos was significant." "Tell me why," Silvara pressed, her own colors shifting to the warm gold of encouragement. Zexthal's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "We were outnumbered 50-1. Logic dictated retreat. But there were civilians on that station. Thousands of them. And when Kyatul asked who would stand with him against impossible odds, you chose to stay," Kyatul finished, his colors blazing with the silver of shared memory. "Not because orders required it, but because your heart demanded it. We don't have hearts, Zexthul said automatically, but his skin was now showing waves of color, remembrance fighting against centuries of suppression. We have something better, Chen interjected, drawing shocked stares from both admirals. We have the choice to act with heart even when we don't have to. The human's words seemed to unlock something fundamental in Zexthal's psychology. His perfect posture wavered as waves of silver and gold crashed across his crystalline skin. I remember, he whispered. I remember choosing. I remember feeling pride, joy, connection. His voice grew stronger. I remember being alive. On the tactical displays, Chen watched the miracle unfold. Ship after ship in Zextol's battle group was powering down weapons, their crews experiencing the same awakening as their commander. The civil war that had threatened to tear the Zephyrian fleet apart was transforming into something unprecedented, a species-wide renaissance of feeling. But not all were ready to evolve. Admiral Colvan of the Third Fleet refuses all communication. Communications Officer Telmar reported urgently. His battle group is moving to bombardment positions around Earth. The mood on the bridge shifted instantly. Colvan commanded the most fanatical purists in the fleet. 40 vessels crewed by Zephyrians who viewed any deviation from absolute conformity as a plague to be burned out of existence. He means to glass the planet, Cato stated grimly. If he can't stop the spread of emotional evolution, he'll destroy what he sees as the source. Silvara's skin flashed between gold resolve and silver fear. How long until he reaches bombardment range? 17 minutes, Tactical Officer Zarth replied, his color showing the orange of urgent alarm. Chen felt the weight of 3 billion human lives pressing down on him. Everything they had accomplished, the awakening of the Zephyrian fleet, the beginning of true interspecies understanding, would mean nothing if Colvan succeeded in his genocidal mission. Can the awakened ship stop him? He asked. Not in time, Admiral Cathel admitted, studying the tactical displays. Colvan has positioned his fleet perfectly. Even if we move immediately, we cannot intercept before he begins bombardment. Then we have to reach in the same way we reached you, Silvara decided. Communication, connection, the hope that some part of his original self still exists. Beneath the conditioning, Colvan underwent aggressive purity enhancement after the Rim Wars, Zexthal said, his newly awakened emotions showing deep concern. His emotional centers were surgically suppressed beyond normal Unity protocols. He may be truly unreachable. But Chen was studying the data streams flowing across the bridge displays, and he saw something that gave him a desperate idea. Your Majesty, look at the ship positioning in his fleet. They're not in standard bombardment formation. Silvara examined the tactical data. You're right. It's protective. Like he's shielding something. Or someone, Chen realized. He called up biographical data on Admiral Colvan, scanning through decades of service records until he found what he was looking for. There, ship registry shows one vessel in his fleet carrying civilian passengers, the Salandra, transporting diplomatic families, including his own. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Despite his emotional suppression, despite surgical conditioning, Colvan was still unconsciously protecting someone he cared about. His bondmate and offspring are on that ship, Catul breathed. Even after enhancement surgery, some part of him still feels protective instincts. Then that's how we reach him, Silvara declared. Not through logic or authority, but through love that refuses to die. She moved to the communications station, her colors shifting to the deep gold of absolute determination. Open a channel to Admiral Colvan. All frequencies. Channel open, Your Majesty. When Silvara spoke, her voice carried every harmonic of emotion the Zephyrian language could convey, not to convince through logic, but to awaken through feeling. Colvan, she said, using his personal name rather than rank. I know you can hear love in my voice, even if you cannot acknowledge it. I know because I see how you position your ships to protect the Salandra. On Earth's surface, 3 billion humans looked up at the sky where death hung in orbital darkness, unaware that salvation might come from the awakening heart of a surgically enhanced alien admiral whose love for his family had survived every attempt to cut it out of him. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, waiting for one broken heart to remember how to feel. The communication channel crackled with interference patterns that might have been weapons charging, or might have been the sound of a soul fighting its way back to consciousness through centuries of imposed numbness. In the silence between stars, love and genocide balanced on the edge of a single choice. And then Admiral Colvin's voice came through the darkness, carrying the first tremor of feeling. My queen. I remember her laughter. The emotional awakening of the Zephyrian Empire was complete, and with it came the dawn of a new age where two species would learn that the space between hearts was the shortest distance in the universe.